Hey, Charles Hoffman here from Plugin Alliance. Songs in the 1980s featured bright and lush reverbs with long decay times. Big reverbs made their way into pop, rock, new wave, synth pop, and many other genres. Lots of the reverbs being used were digital reverbs that sounded crisp and clean. The Bettermaker BM60 emulates a popular digital reverb released in 1984 that became synonymous with the lush and dramatic sound of reverb from this decade. This piece of hardware was actually created to fill a gap in the pro audio market. Prior to that, in 1978, a digital reverb called the Lexicon 224 was released, which gained popularity in pro studios. It was a very feature-rich product, but also somewhat complex and extremely expensive. There was a demand for a digital reverb that was easy to use, more affordable than the Lexicon 224, and still sounded big and full. The Bettermaker BM60 instantly adds the sound of 1980s reverb to your music. It's great for vocals, snares, pads, and in my personal opinion, this is one of the best plugins to use when applying gated reverb effects to drums. It provides the same gated reverb sound found on countless songs from the 80s. Stick around until the end of the video and I'll show you how to create this iconic effect. You can demo the Bettermaker BM60 by starting a free Megaplan trial using the link below. This will give you access to all of Plugin Alliance's products for 30 days. Let's start things off with some audio examples.
Wherever I look, I see pain around every corner, fighting with each other, and that ain't good. Wherever I look, I see pain around every corner, fighting with each other, and that ain't good.
The controls on this reverb recreate the controls found on the hardware, but Bettermaker has added some extra features as well. When dialing in your reverb settings, moving left to right will work quite nicely, so that's what we'll do. You have input and output level adjustment knobs. There's a mix knob that allows you to adjust the blend between the dry signal and processed signal. If you apply the BM60 directly to a track, you can adjust this to control the presence of the reverb. If you've applied the reverb to an aux track, you'll want to set the mix to 100% and then adjust the send level to control the reverb's presence. There's a bypass switch that allows you to toggle the reverb on and off. You also have a power switch, but the difference is that the bypass switch keeps the input stage and bottom panel features enabled, while the power switch completely disables the processing applied by the plugin. You can choose between two reverb algorithms, plate and room. Plate reverbs were originally created using large metal plates with transducers attached to them. The transducers vibrate at the plate, and pickups capture the vibrations, leading to a metallic reverb sound. Plate reverbs tend to sound smooth, bright, and clear. They're usually used for vocals and percussion.
Wherever I look, I see pain around every corner, fighting with each other, and that ain't good.
Room reverb emulates the natural reflections of a sound in a physical space. This is often achieved using recorded impulse responses of real spaces, which you might know as convolution reverb or algorithmic reverb, which uses algorithms to create the effect.
Wherever I look, I see pain around every corner, fighting with each other, and that ain't good.
Room reverb tends to sound more natural and familiar compared to plate reverb. This makes sense since the purpose is to simulate how sound reflects off walls, ceilings, and floors. The BM60's room algorithm sounds slightly less bright and more diffuse than the plate algorithm, so you can take your sound in two different directions. All reverbs aim to create a sense of space regardless of what's happening under the hood. Size modifies various sound characteristics to affect the size of that space. Think about how it sounds when you speak in a small bathroom versus a large gymnasium. You have small, large, and two settings in between. Reverb time controls the decay time of the reverb. You can use a small setting with a long reverb time. This would create the sense of a small room with very reflective surfaces like tile. Doing the reverse, you can choose a large room with a short reverb time, creating the sense of a big space with surfaces that absorb reflections. The walls might sound like they're made of wood or covered in insulation. The contour controls de-emphasize your low end and top end. If your reverb sounds like it's overtaking the dry signal, try turning these switches on. It will shrink the space that your reverb takes up in the mix. We've covered all the controls on the hardware, but Bettermaker has added some additional controls. Predelay delays the reverb so it plays back a little later than the dry signal. This can help avoid muddiness. You'll hear this clearly when listening to a transient sound. Width adjusts the stereo width of the reverb. Small values narrow the reverb, while larger values widen it. If you're working with a wide sound, you may want to use a narrow reverb and vice versa. This is a common mixing technique to help fill space and prevent a washed out sound. Monofier sums the low end into mono up to the selected frequency, improving low end focus. There's also a ducker feature that makes room for the dry signal. The level of the reverb is reduced in level by the amount you've specified when the dry signal plays. This lets you clearly hear the dry signal, even when using big and full reverb settings.
Wherever I look, I see pain around every corner, fighting with each other, and that ain't good. Wherever I look, I see pain around every corner, fighting with each other, and that ain't good. Wherever I look, I see pain around every corner, fighting with each other, and that ain't good.
The recovery knob adjusts the time it takes the reverb to return to its normal level once the dry signal dies out.
Wherever I look, I see pain around every corner, fighting with each other, and that ain't good. Wherever I look, I see pain around every corner, fighting with each other, and that ain't good.
Right-clicking on the knob allows you to change the detector type and choose between peak detection or RMS detection. Peak detection will result in a snappy and responsive recovery, while RMS detection will lead to a more laid-back and smooth recovery. Up top, you can turn tooltips on and off. There are various presets to choose from. You can undo and redo parameter changes. It's also possible to toggle between views A, B, C, and D to experiment with different settings. You can copy and paste settings from one view to another, as well as reset the selected view's settings. The GUI is also fully scalable, so you can adjust it to fit your monitor. In the early 80s, we saw the rise of gated reverb, which was the happy accident of a recording incident at Townhouse Studios. Hugh Padgham and Phil Collins were working on Peter Gabriel's album Melt when they made the discovery. There was an active talkback mic running through a compressor and noise gate while recording drums. They noticed that the drums sounded extremely reverberant due to the compression, but abrupt and controlled because of the gate. Phil Collins went on to use this effect on the drums in his song In the Air Tonight. This set a precedent for the rest of the 80s, where you'll hear gated reverb on tons of tracks. To create this effect in your DAW, apply the Bettermaker BM60 to a return track. Turn the mix to 100% wet. Adjust the program, size, and reverb time settings to taste. You'll want to go with a pretty large size and reverb time. Now, slam the reverb with compression. I'm using 3Body Technologies' Cenozoics compressor. It has plenty of different compression algorithms to choose from. I'll go with the Black FET compressor to emulate the sound of one of the most popular hardware compressors from the 80s. Finally, I'll finish the effect with Unfiltered Audio's G8, which is a dynamic gate. It allows you to create rhythmic gate effects, which is pretty cool, but we'll be using it as a regular gate here. Select peak mode, drop the threshold to the level that you want the reverb to cut out, and then fine-tune the processing applied with the knobs at the bottom. You can demo the Bettermaker BM60 by starting a free Megaplan trial using the link below. This will give you access to all of Plugin Alliance's products for 30 days. If this video helped you out, give it a like and subscribe to the Plugin Alliance YouTube channel for more walkthroughs like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.